You don't drink Coca-Cola, you participate in it. Every second, more than 20,000 people around the world take a sip, not because they are thirsty, but because they were taught to be. This isn't a story about sugar and bubbles. This is the story of how a brown liquid became one of the most powerful belief systems in human history. How did a drink invented in the 19th century outlive empires, wars, presidents, and ideologies? How did it cross borders without armies, enter homes without permission, and become familiar to people who don't even speak the same language? And more importantly, what did it cost the world to make that happen? Because nothing this universal is ever innocent. Before Coca-Cola became refreshment, before it became happiness, before it became American, it was desperation. Not a brand, not a vision, just a man trying to escape pain. And like all powerful empires, it began quietly, with a problem no one wanted to solve. In the late 1800s, America was restless. Civil War scars were still fresh. Painkillers were common. Addiction was normal. John Stith Pemberton was a pharmacist, a wounded Confederate veteran, and a morphine addict. He wasn't trying to change the world. He was trying to survive it. In a small laboratory in Atlanta, Pemberton experimented obsessively, mixing leaves, syrups, extracts, not to create joy, but to numb pain. What he created was a thick, dark syrup, bitter, medicinal, forgettable at first. One day, by mistake, the syrup was mixed with carbonated water instead of plain. The bitterness softened, the sharpness sparkled. People didn't just drink it, they reacted to it. Not because it tasted good, but because it felt different. It stimulated, it comforted, it lingered. And that reaction, that feeling, was far more valuable than taste. Pemberton never realized what he had made. He thought he invented a product. In reality, he had accidentally touched the human nervous system. Coca leaves, caffeine, sugar. A combination designed not for refreshment, but for repetition. Your brain didn't ask questions. It asked for more. But the man who created it was broke, sick, and dying. So before Coca-Cola could become immortal, its creator faded into history. As Pemberton's health collapsed, others circled. Businessmen didn't see medicine, they saw scale. The formula was sold, then sold again, then fought over. Ownership became blurred, ethics became optional. And quietly, without headlines, Coca-Cola slipped out of the hands of its creator. The drink survived. The man did not. This wasn't innovation. This was transfer of power. The real breakthrough wasn't the formula. It was the realization that Coca-Cola didn't need to be sold as a drink. It needed to be sold as a feeling, relief, energy, normalcy, belonging. Coca-Cola wasn't competing with beverages, it was competing with silence, with emptiness, with emotional gaps people didn't know how to fill. By the early 1900s, Coca-Cola had made a decision that would change history. It would not chase thirst, it would chase habit. And habits, once formed, don't ask for permission. They repeat. Across soda fountains, drugstores, and street corners, the brown liquid spread. Not loudly, not aggressively, but constantly. But here's the part no one talks about. For Coca-Cola to conquer the world, it first had to conquer something else. Not taste, not price. It had to conquer memory. And once it learned how to live inside people's memories, there was no going back. By the early 20th century, Coca-Cola understood something terrifyingly simple. People don't remember facts, they remember feelings. So Coca-Cola stopped asking, "Does it taste good?" and started asking, "What do we want them to feel when they see our name?" That question didn't create a product, it created a strategy. Coca-Cola didn't invent modern advertising, it perfected it. Instead of explaining what the drink was, it showed what life could look like with it. Smiling families, young couples, moments of pause in a chaotic world. The message was never spoken out loud, but it was always understood. If this moment matters, Coca-Cola belongs here. That was the real recipe. Then the world broke apart. World War I, then World War II. Factories turned into weapons, borders hardened, nations bled. But Coca-Cola saw something others missed. War wasn't just destruction, it was distribution. Coca-Cola promised the US government one thing. Every American soldier, anywhere in the world, would get a bottle of Coke for 5 cents. No matter the cost, no matter the distance. Coca-Cola followed the troops into Europe, into Africa, into the Pacific. Bottling plants were built next to battlefields. Logistics lines carried sugar instead of bullets. For soldiers, Coca-Cola wasn't a drink. It was home, a reminder of who they were before the uniform. And when the war ended, the factories stayed. So did the habit. Coca-Cola didn't conquer foreign markets. It waited. It let soldiers introduce it to locals. It let nostalgia do the work. By the time peace arrived, Coca-Cola was already familiar. Not foreign, not American, just normal. That's how empires survive resentment. They don't force acceptance. They wait for invitation. After the wars, the world wanted one thing: normal life. Coca-Cola didn't sell recovery. It sold happiness, not abstract happiness, simple happiness. A pause, a smile, a moment where everything feels okay. But here's the danger. When happiness becomes something you can buy, absence becomes unbearable, and Coca-Cola positioned itself as the fastest cure. Doctors began asking questions: sugar, addiction, consumption. But Coca-Cola didn't argue. It distracted. New campaigns, new slogans, new emotions. Every doubt was answered with a feeling, and feelings are harder to fight than facts. By now, Coca-Cola wasn't just everywhere. It was untouchable. Governments hesitated, critics softened, competitors disappeared. But power creates blindness, and Coca-Cola was about to learn something the hard way. Because when a brand becomes too perfect, people start testing the illusion, and the next challenge wouldn't come from war, it would come from choice. By the late 20th century, Coca-Cola was no longer fighting for market share. It was the market. Restaurants didn't ask if they should serve Coke. They asked which size. Movie theaters didn't negotiate. They complied. In many places, Coca-Cola arrived before electricity, before running water, before choice. This wasn't success anymore. It was infrastructure. The most powerful systems don't announce themselves. They normalize. Coca-Cola didn't tell people to drink it every day. It simply made sure it was always there, at gas stations, at schools, at celebrations, at grief. Availability became persuasion, and persuasion became routine. When something is everywhere, your brain stops questioning it. But bodies don't care about branding. Doctors began noticing patterns: weight gain, diabetes, tooth decay, not in small numbers, in populations. Suddenly, Coca-Cola wasn't just refreshment. It was being mentioned in the same sentences as epidemics. And for the first time, the feeling wasn't enough. Coca-Cola never said, "We are harmless." It said something smarter: everything in moderation. Responsibility quietly shifted from corporation to consumer. If you drank too much, that was your failure, not the system's design. This wasn't denial, it was reframing. And reframing is the most effective form of defense. As pressure grew, Coca-Cola didn't disappear, it multiplied. Diet, zero, light, different labels, same ritual. Choice creates comfort. Even when the outcome doesn't change, people felt in control again. And control, even if symbolic, keeps people loyal. In developing nations, Coca-Cola became aspirational, a sign of modern life, of progress, of inclusion. Water wasn't always safe. Coca-Cola was consistent. That reliability mattered. But consistency came with a cost. Local drinks vanished. Local habits weakened. Global taste replaced local identity. And nobody voted for it. At some point, the question stopped being, is Coca-Cola good? And became, is it too powerful? Because when a single company influences diet, culture, and memory across continents, it stops being just business. It becomes governance. Soft governance. The kind that smiles. Then something unexpected happened. People didn't stop drinking Coca-Cola. They started thinking about it. Transparency, sustainability, plastic waste, health. The spell didn't shatter, but it cracked. And for an empire built on emotional certainty, even doubt was dangerous. Because the final battle wouldn't be fought with competitors. It would be fought with conscience. Power ages quietly. By the time Coca-Cola realized the world was changing, the questions were no longer about taste or price. They were about trust, plastic mountains, water extraction, health systems under strain. The brand wasn't accused of being evil. It was accused of being careless. And carelessness is harder to defend than intention. Coca-Cola did what powerful systems always do when challenged. It listened selectively. It funded research. It pledged sustainability. It changed labels. It spoke the language of responsibility, not loudly, carefully. Because empires don't survive by admitting guilt, they survive by adapting the story. The product didn't disappear. The narrative evolved from happiness to balance, from celebration to choice. Coca-Cola didn't ask people to stop. It asked them to feel informed. And feeling informed is often enough to keep behavior unchanged. This wasn't retreat. It was recalibration. Few companies reach a point where their absence feels unnatural. Coca-Cola did. In some places, a celebration without it feels incomplete. In others, childhood memories carry its sound before its taste. That's not branding. That's imprint, the kind that outlives trends, leaders, and criticism. But imprints also carry responsibility, because when something shapes culture, it inherits the consequences of that culture. Can a system built on repetition learn restraint? Can a habit scaled to billions ever truly step back? Coca-Cola doesn't force consumption, it enables it. And enabling, at scale, changes the rules of morality. At what point does choice stop being free? When the environment is designed to guide it? Every empire begins as a solution, something that makes life easier, softer, more bearable. Coca-Cola solved a feeling, and in doing so, it learned how to live inside moments people didn't want to question. That is power without volume, the kind you don't notice until you try to imagine life without it. Coca-Cola didn't conquer the world with force. It arrived with smiles, with pauses, with promises of normalcy, and the world welcomed it. Not because it demanded space, but because it filled one. So the question isn't whether Coca-Cola went too far. The question is simpler. Why did we let it feel so natural? Because Coca-Cola is not unique. It's a template for how systems grow quietly, how habits become infrastructure, how comfort becomes control. And the next empire won't announce itself either. It will arrive the same way, familiar, harmless, already chosen.